Welcome to Built by a Boss. I'm your host, Evelyn Brooks, journalist, award-winning producer, and author. On this podcast, you'll hear unique origin stories, growth strategies, and meaningful insights from successful female founders, entrepreneurs, disruptors, and pioneers who are dedicated to moving the culture forward with intention. On our show today, Olympic bobsled bronze medalist Sylvia Hoffman. She was first discovered and recruited for the national bobsled team on the next Olympic hopeful. She's a Texas native who was diagnosed with scoliosis in the 8th grade and had to wear a back brace for years. But get this, she still managed to play college basketball and participate in international competitions for the USA weightlifting team. She offers such great advice on how to overcome obstacles and think like an elite athlete when you're trying to achieve a major life goal. Here's Sylvia Hoffman. First of all, I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Yeah.
So right now, I know that you are a bobsledder, which is amazing in and of itself. So just give me the overview of what you're doing right now, and then we'll kind of go backwards and then go forwards again.
That's fun. Because right now I am dabbling in long jump. And my thought process with that is like, okay, well, you're going to use this obviously as cross training. It transfers well into bobsled because you have to sprint and jump anyway.
Right.
And some of the stuff that they do in athletics are the things that you need to be doing anyway, and which I haven't been doing. So this is kind of forcing myself to take care of certain movements and certain, like, just get stronger in certain ways that I've just been kind of putting off because I could.
So kind of explain what bobsledding entails for those who may not recall it from the Olympics or have actually never seen the sport.
Yeah, of course. So what bobsled is, it is a male and female winter sport. There is now 2 events for the women and 2 events for the men. The women have monobob, which is one person. That one person is the driver. They are the brake person. They are the push athlete. They're all of the above. So they push the sled off the line. They jump in the sled. They drive it down the hill, and they pull the brakes at the end.
Talk about when you decided to bobsled. What came up for you in terms of the changes you had to make, right? In terms of, I'm coming from this other sport. It's cold. It's in Colorado. I've never done this before. How did you get past those obvious obstacles?
Well, it's honestly pretty crazy because I grew up in Arlington, Texas. I'm from Philadelphia. I grew up in Texas. They say like it doesn't snow down there. Like technically it does. It snows almost every year in North Texas. I actually started in a warmer environment, and then I went to Louisiana, and then I met people in weightlifting. I met my first winter Olympian. Now she's a 5-time Olympian in skeleton. And I was like, oh, so like now I'm able to meet different people. And with my adventures with Olympic weightlifting, I made three different international teams. I'm like meeting people from different parts of the world. I'm learning how to make an Olympic team with weightlifting because I never learned that in basketball. They just tell you to go out there, go score, go do this, let's go win some games, but how do you set records? Like, are there national records for how many, like for high schoolers or for how many points they score, rebounders? Like, what does that look like? It was never kind of structured to where like we knew these are the steps to make an Olympic team. And with that being my, lifelong dream, as a child and watching Athens games, I'm like, wow, this is cool. I want to do this. I'm learning as I'm getting older, but I'm also trying to like satisfy my, my need for computer science. That was also a thing. I was like, I want to satisfy this. Like, I want to be able to like utilize my brain in some type of way. So like I pursued that degree in computer science as a computer information systems major. And what I was able to learn was not that there's just always a way to do something, but you have to make sure that you're able to transfer things. So with me switching sports and learning different sports, I was able to learn how to do things more efficiently. And with weightlifting, I went from Louisiana. Now I'm in Colorado. I'm still lifting weights, but it's cold up here. I'm not at a university. I'm lifting in this garage like gym that doesn't have, like air conditioning. So I'm like cold all the time now. And with weightlifting, like just noticing my progressions in that and what I lacked at the very beginning, I was like, I'm not going to make it to the Olympic Games or even Olympic team trials with weightlifting. I love weightlifting. I love doing this. I chose the sport. I didn't feel like someone chose it for me. I pursued it. I learned about it. And I'm like, but I'm not going to go as far as I want to. I'm like, what else can I do? And so I do the next Olympic hopeful scouting camp and I say, well, hey, I want to switch sports.
What was really powerful about what you said, and it's a very hard thing to do and to recognize, you said you loved weightlifting, but you got to a point where you realize, I'm not going to go all the way with this, and I want to go all the way. So how difficult was it to stop that thing and then start over from scratch with another sport that you also didn't really know your long-term potential with, but you thought, why not give that a try? Because I know that this isn't going to work. Take me through that thought process, because sometimes we continue down a road in life that is just stop. It's never going to be that thing you want. So talk about being able to recognize that, pivot, and then try something new.
So for me, I'm one of those that's emotional athlete. I'm very in tune with what I'm doing. I love what I'm doing. Like I said, I love competing. So that whole process and journey of like learning how to do it right to the best of my ability, I'm like, that's what I like to achieve. So with weightlifting, I did it for 8 years and I loved weightlifting. I loved everything about it. It reinforces the mental, the physical, it just defies what you're even capable of doing because, most women, we don't really lift weights like that. And like, it was kind of like a thing of like, yes, you can, and it's like, reconfirming like how strong you can be. And with all the affirmations, like you can do it, you got it, you're strong, you got this, like all of those things and cues that we get in training, even in competition, like that's going to carry you, for years to come. So for me, it was like breaking up. I was just like, man, this sucks. Like I was, yeah, it was, but and as a Olympic athlete or Olympic pursuing athlete, we have to transition a couple times in our careers as athletes. Like we tend to have like maybe 2 retirements. And I was just like, am I retiring right now? Like I was like in a space where I was just like, I needed to work from home. I told him, I was like, I need some time. Like I need some time like away from the office so I can like figure out what I wanted to do. And, like on one of my breaks, I'm like, okay, well, I'm scrolling on Instagram and I see this ad and it says next Olympic hopeful scouting camp. And I know from my coach, he was like, well, in Europe, we always have people looking to choose an athlete that's not a good fit for one sport and put them in another and they could be successful. And I'm like, well, scouting camp, duh. So I was like, okay, let's do this. And so I tried the scouting camp and mind you, I didn't even win, which like infuriated me on the inside. I'm like, I don't know. It was like that competitive thing that came out and I'm just like, because I did really well. But the thing was about the documentary series was they weren't necessarily looking for people that were already successful in Team USA sports. And I had made 3 international teams with USA weightlifting. So I was already a successful athlete. Like, okay, and I get invited to, one of their camps. And like I said, I was successful right off the bat because not only am I just like coming from switching sports, from something I love, now I'm doing something new. And I was able to showcase that I was able to beat all the women in that particular scouting camp. And then most of the men, I think I had the fastest push times out of almost every man except for like 2 men. There were 4 or 5 other NGBs that were like, hey, you're a good fit for us. Which sport do you want to do? And I'm like, NGB? An NGB is a national governing body, which is like
Oh, for the
basketball.
Olympics, right.
Yeah, USA Basketball, that's an NGB, USA Weightlifting, NGB. So they're pretty much the governing bodies over each sport. So then that way they can have some type of, like some type of flow into the International Olympic Committee. So each country has their own national governing bodies, and then they have their Olympic Committee. So the United States has the USOPC, United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee. So this is our committee for our country, and each country has the same. So there were 4 or 5 different sports, NGBs, that said, hey, you're a good fit. And they were like, well, which sport do you want to do? I'm like, I'm here for you guys to choose me. I'm 28 years old. Clearly, I've been making some bad decisions, which sports I want to do. I want to make the Olympic team. Show me the way and I will do it, is what I told them. They're like, well, it's your choice too. I'm like, this is my choice.
Yes.
I'm like, you choose, you make
so there was a surrender. So you surrendered in that moment. Was that hard to do?
Because I was around people that were more experienced in what they needed than I was. And I'm like, well, I also want to be in a sport that makes sense for me. Like still to this day, like, one of the coaches was like, you're going to do really well. You should try boxing. But I'm like, I have to be okay with getting hit in the face.
Yes. Yes.
It's part of the sport.
But that's number one.
Right. I was like, I have to be okay with that. I was like, and I'm like, I don't think I'm really that okay. And they said to like, look at it as defending yourself. And I'm like, that made it better. But then I looked at the other aspects of the sport. They're waking up at 6 a.m. They're running, several miles. I'm like, I've never been a several mile runner athlete. So I felt like that wasn't a really good fit because I came from basketball. Yes, we woke up early, but we didn't have to do miles in that particular way, like consistency. It's like swimming, the same thing. They swim miles. I don't know how to do it, but it's not for everyone. And I felt like I want to make sure it's going to actually fit what I know I can do and what I'm mentally prepared to do. So then when Bob said, hey, come on out, I'm like, okay, because I had already did well in their event. So I came out and I was able to be successful.
That's fabulous. So a couple of things that I really loved about that. One, and I think we could all apply this. A lot of times, a lot of people, maybe they're choosing a career, right? Or maybe you're just out of college, or maybe you just need a life change, right? And there's something really amazing about what you said, is that you really need to figure out what are your best qualities, right? What are you naturally good at? What do you enjoy? And then do that. Like a lot of times we're wanting something that doesn't want us in life. Right. And so when you make the decision, like, I want to be in alignment with the thing that I'm doing. So when here's the thing though, we can make all of the right choices. We can, figure out that we're a fit. Someone else externally can say we're a fit, try this. But what I know from experience is that when you actually physically step into the role, there's still another learning curve. And there's some second guessing, like, is this really the right fit? Did I do the right thing?
Those thoughts. Yeah, I had those thoughts, my first time down the hill is what we call going down a track. My first time down the hill in Lake Placid, New York, I took my first trip and I wasn't expecting this. I'm wearing a helmet. First of all, I'm wearing a helmet for the first time in my life. Never really did motorcycles. I want to, don't get me wrong, but I never had that thing of like, oh yeah, I got a helmet at home, I can go put it on. Like I never had that. So now I'm like pushing, just the random, like the equipment, the training equipment with a helmet. I'm like, okay, it's a little different, but there's no visor, so it's fine. And then I get my brand new helmet for the first time and I'm going down the hill. I take my first trip and I'm just like, there's 20 corners. I'm able to count to 3. Because after 3, it got really crazy really fast. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know which way was which. I'm like, stuff is hitting me. I'm like, should I go against it? Should I fight it? Should I be tense the whole time? I'm just like, I don't know what to think. And that's what bobsled is, especially when you first get in the sport. And when people say, well, what's it like? You're like, you just got to try it, like because everyone's experience is different. So it wasn't the thing of like, oh, I'm feeling stuff in the sled. I'm feeling the sled. I feel like something's hitting me. Like it wasn't none of those things because I did a contact sport.
Mhm.
So I was like, okay, we get down the hill and they put this camera right in front of you. So
Oh
each
boy.
one of us, we do interviews, like post first run interviews. And my teammate comes up and says, hey, what'd you think about your first, bobsled run? I'm like, ah, my hair is wild. I didn't even know what it looked like. I just took my helmet off. Man, I looked a mess. And I was just like, it's okay, like still unsure in my brain. I'm like, I don't know about this. And then they ask you that question, well, would you do it again? And then there's this like, it's like yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And I was just like,
Maybe.
yeah, I'll do it. And so you verbally commit to another one. And so I was like, yeah, I'll go down the hill again. And then the second run, it felt very different. And mind you, it's going to feel different if you're not used to going down the hill. So I've already tired myself out in the first run. So the second run, I'm a little bit more, let's just say, let's say if you do a 200, you're gas and you have to do another one, you're not going to be as efficient as the first one.
Right.
So I'm going down the hill again and I'm like, okay, I know it's going to be crazy. And I'm just like, wow, this really feels different. And then all of a sudden we crash. So
Mm.
my second run ever down a bobsled, I crash and I'm just like, oh my gosh, what is that? And like initially when you do go over, it's kind of like a, did we? Yep. Yep. And so like they give us a crash protocol. So they tell us that like helmet, shoulder, if you can't get off the ice. And because we're going as fast as we would in a car and we're sliding on ice super fast and that creates friction. Friction creates heat. And now you may or may not end up with a burn. And I'm just like, well, I don't want to burn, So I'm like trying to get off the ice and stuff. And we finally stop and I'm just like, are you okay? She's like, are you okay? Like, we're just like having these moments of like, like trying to figure out if each one of us are good. And I'm just like, yeah, good. Like, okay, so, and I called my coach, my weightlifting coach, and I said, hey, Zygmunt, I was like, we just crashed today. And he was just like, okay, how are you? I was like, I think I'm okay. I was like, well, I didn't hit my head. So I was like, that's good. I was like, I don't think I injured. I was like, I have like a little burn or whatever, but it's not bad. And then he said the same thing he would in training. Okay, go again.
Yes. Go again. Yes.
Gosh, this
Yes.
guy from
Yes.
miles
I
away.
love that. You know why I love that so much? Because natural ability does not mean that you don't have to practice. You don't have to work at it. You're not,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean you're not going to be bad at it the first time.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to deal with people that maybe have more experience than you.
Mhm.
And then you're trying to catch up. It's like,
Yeah.
it's so amazing. Your coach obviously knew exactly what to say, but
Yeah.
how many times in life do we try something, we crash and burn, and we're like,
Yeah.
ah, that's it for me.
Yeah. And I tell our coaches that because this year was my first year behind the in the driver's seat. I did 4 years as a brake woman. So like I was that person that like pushed the sled off the line. And that's one of the biggest jobs as a brake woman is getting the sled going because the pilot can't necessarily do that as efficiently as the brakeman. The brakeman is in the rear of the sled. So they have the entire weight of the sled right there in front of them while the pilot, they're on the side. So they have to kind of like get in there a little bit more. And with that being said, you're probably pushing right more than you are forward and you're not going to go as fast as you can from the brakes. So this year was my first year as a pilot. And, one of the coaches was saying, it was like, well, you're kind of like all over the place when you're doing stuff. And I'm like, well, there's several corners to these tracks. I was like, I got to be able to learn these things. And I told her, I was like, well, basically doing the same thing I did as a brake woman. I'm like, you got to drill it in there. Like it kind of sucked because as a brake woman, I squeezed 4 years into 2.5. And it's very difficult to do. But with my background and what I learned and how to do stuff, and what to look for, I was able to do that successfully. I had a hard time. I'm like, but I had that mental thing. I'm like, you've already shown that you can be a winner in this sport your first year.
Yes.
First, like you've already shown it. I was like, now just get in and do the hard work and make sure you progress. Like hit those milestones. And I tell people it was my first time having a 4-year plan. And everyone says, like, what are you gonna do in 4 or 5 years? I don't know. Like, I want to do this, but it was my first time actually saying, okay, I want to do this. okay, I need to do this, and it has to be done like to the absolute best of my ability. And I saw like, and I call them red flags now, like and it's just a lack of knowledge in some areas. But some of our coaches, you know, in the sport, they were so used to doing and seeing certain things, they were kind of like stuck in their own way. So some of the feedback I would get was, well, you're doing it wrong. Oh, you should do it like this. Well, we usually do these things. Oh, why are you using timing eyes? Well, you need to feel what you're doing in the sled, or, you know, when you're practicing on how to learn how to push. Well, I was my own push coach. I decided to take on that role because I wanted a direct hand in my progressions as a push athlete. So I had a sprint coach, I had a weightlifting coach, and I was the middle person as the push coach. I went out and sought help from certain people that were around the sport, you know, the longest, and they were able to at least tell me, okay, yeah, this is what I'm used to looking at. These are some things you might have to like correct. So with that being said, now I'm like doing trial and error. And the timing eye situation that came in, I always had a reason for everything, like, I think my parents call it justification, but I had a reason because it was specific to what I was looking for. I'm like, I'm not a track and field athlete at the time. I was just learning how to sprint better. I was like, so my sprint coach says, she's like, you need to time everything that you do. She's like, that's the only way you're going to keep yourself accountable, hold yourself accountable for your own progress. She was like, you can sprint and push all day, but she was like, you need to go and time yourself. I'm like, you're right, because there's no coach on site that's actually teaching me how to do these things. So I need to do something that's going to help me know what is my workload capacity. Like, am I getting better with each run or each, push, or am I starting to get slower and slower and slower? So I was able to gauge all of these things by simply having a timing system there present. And it was frowned upon. It was like, well, you always have them out there like every day. I'm like, yeah, because I'm trying to get better. Like I don't know how fast I'm pushing. I don't know the workload at which I'm doing it at. And I'm like, I'm new to this sport. I'm like, I want to make the team. So I'm doing everything in my capacity, like using all the resources. They say, hey, we have sports med. Okay, cool. I have sports med access. I can go, get some tissue work done. I can get a massage done. I can do like some of the sports performance things that's going to help me in the long run. I'm like learning everything that I can on every level, to the point where now I've created space so I can start learning how to drive a bobsled. And I was able to qualify for World Cup my first season. I was on five different tracks. I was in 7 different sleds. I set a start record at the very end of the season. I got like everything that I planned to do, I ended up doing. And I was like, well, that's success. And one of the coaches was like, what's your lowest point? And I was like, I didn't really have one, and it was because of just how to, control the controllables. If it was out of my wheelhouse of controlling whatever that situation was, I'm not going to put that on myself and make myself feel bad about it. I'm like, all the success that I had this year, if I get down on one of those successes that I have, I was like, you're not grateful. So now I'm thinking of blessings. Yeah.
What you're saying, first of all, for anyone listening, like, they're about to be blessed, because this is a master class in goal setting, right? Because it's like all of these pivot points, all of these moments along the way, every single thing matter. But here's the thing that really strikes me about what you're saying. First of all, you came up with a 5-year plan, right? So you had a vision of your outcome. Like, what do I want to happen? How do I want to feel? I say that all the time. And when I'm setting a goal, because sometimes you think you see something and you think you want that, but it may not be that thing. You really want to feel a certain way. And will this activity or this accomplishment help you feel what you're trying to achieve? So that's the first thing. And so then just the idea of being able to accept criticism, asking for feedback, and then reiterating, right? Trying something different. I tried this, I'm going to try it this way. And then trusting your own instinct and your own mindset around what has made you successful in the past, and then applying each of those things. It's just like, if we just step back and just look at that alone, and apply that every time we're trying to achieve another goal, like we would all be Oprah Winfrey right now. But the thing I
Man.
love about it though is you trust your own inner guidance. And is that something that was always there, that developed over time? Was there a pivotal moment where something didn't work out, or maybe something did, and you're like, you know what? No matter what happens, I'm going to trust my own instincts and allow my inner guidance to direct me in the path that I'm trying to go.
That is something that I feel like it's always been there, but it was able to get developed and fine-tuned over time. As children, usually whatever we receive from our parents is what we get, but then it's, well, some stuff isn't adding up. And so that's how I was as a child. And like I'd hear some things that my parents will say, and I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense. And then I would challenge it, and then, challenging something as a child to your parents usually doesn't really work out. So in my household, it didn't work out in my favor, like almost all the time, because like, I was like, that doesn't make sense, and I'd ask about it and I try to figure out the why, and the why was never told to me. And, it would be told maybe like a couple times, or like, I would know the why because I've created this scenario of like, okay, well, you did this and this is going to happen, like cause and effect, if this happens, then this will happen. Like those were things. Right. And that was my computer science self-talking. That was like that side saying, hey, if then situations like this is going to be the outcome and the probability of this outcome. So now my mathematics is starting to take over. And so I relied heavily on those particular aspects of my way of thinking and figuring things out as I was growing. But when I got into weightlifting, it started to be a little bit more clear. I had graduated college and I was able to look back and was like, well, these are the things that were happening. Okay, I had the opportunity, but I wasn't knowledgeable of like what USA basketball was, because I had a couple opportunities to play for USA basketball. At the time, I didn't know what it was. I just know I had received a couple things in the mail after we won state saying, hey, we want you to play in Australia. And I'm like, sweet. And, like we've invested, and like I had known, like, because our parents back then, they would tell us like, we don't have money for this, we don't have money for that, but we can do this. We were blessed in that way of we had opportunity to do things, but we didn't always have the means to do it. And, our parents were like pretty vocal about that. So I knew going to college would be expensive. So I made sure I was going to be able to pay for college without their help. But I didn't know that USA basketball was a route to the Olympics. And when I would say, hey, I got this offer to play in Australia, can I go? And they were like, no. And I'm like, but it's Australia. They're just like, well, too bad. I'm just like, okay, well, that kind of sucks, because at this point I'm like, and this is like, as I'm getting ready to go to college, I'm like, well, at this point, I'm like, we've invested so much time, energy, money, like we have to start exploring other avenues, because at this point I felt like basketball was their choice. Right. If I felt like basketball wasn't something that I wanted to do, people were like, you're going to go play in the WNBA. I'm like, sure. So I'm like, maybe. Sure. If you want me to, I might, and then there was another opportunity and it was also a no. It's like, okay, well, there's two opportunities for USA basketball, but I didn't study what USA basketball was. So with that organization, that was my first opportunity to make probably my first Olympic team. And then I got into weightlifting, and I love the sport. My coach was a really great coach, but he was so burnt out. Like by the time I got there, all of his athletes were my age. Everyone had perfect technique and they were able to do stuff I wasn't able to do.
But I also think there's a level of grit that is connected with that, because I read that early on you discovered that you had scoliosis in the 8th grade. I had an aunt growing up who had scoliosis, and I know it's a lot different now than it was then, but I mean, she had many surgeries and it was very painful. And so it's a different era now. So I know that it's different. But what I also know is I was diagnosed with breast cancer about a decade ago. And I know that when you get, and I'm fine. It was early stage, and I'm here now, and life is good and I'm thriving. But
Yeah.
what I do know is when you get those type of statements from doctors,
Yeah.
it's mind over matter, right? You have to
Yeah.
decide. Like for me, I had to decide, yeah, I hear you, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna live, and
Yeah.
that's that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's not the case for everyone. A lot of times,
Mhm.
people have different stages and things like that.
Mhm.
But I do know the mindset is very important when you get some type of diagnosis or someone says you have this, or it's a way in which, are you going to claim it, or
Mhm.
are you going to move forward in your life and do the very best you can to not be impacted by it in a way
Mhm.
that limits your joy.
Mhm.
So I would say, yes, you are extremely competitive, but I'm sure that moment was pivotal in some way in your life. So can you talk about that?
Oh, I thought it was over. I was like, athletic dreams crushed. Like, and like, because, there was a couple people that said, well, you have scoliosis, and usually people that have scoliosis, they're not able to do many things in sport. And I'm just like, and as a child, I'm like already knowing that I'm very athletic. Like it was self-explanatory. I love being outside. I love doing sports. I love being active. I was like, makes sense. So for me, I was like, hearing that news was like, man, well, what do I do now? And like I say, I talk about blessings is because like, my dad, he went out and he tried to, find the best solutions. We ran into Scottish Rite Children's Hospital in Dallas, Texas, and they specialize in, scoliosis. And it was a lot to handle, but because I was still able to still do sports in some capacity, I was like, okay, I think I'm good. But my friend, on the other hand, that I had known since like first grade, she also has scoliosis, but she had to wear her brace for 20 to 22 hours a day.
Wow.
Yeah. So like about 20 hours a day, like that kind of like removes the sport aspect. So she actually would come into practice and she'd have her back brace on. Well, I came into practice and I didn't have to have mine on, but when I would leave practice, I'd put it back on, because I'm like, I want my back to be straight and stuff. I don't want it to get worse, because the point of wearing the brace is to keep the spine from getting worse as you're getting as your bones as you're still developing, so as you're getting taller still, like instead of it going either right or left, it's kind of being compressed to go straight up.
Mhm.
So I was able to reduce my curve from 39 to 35 degrees. And then that 30 to 35 degree curve held throughout my entire college career, because I tried to go to the Air Force and they MEPS disqualified me for having scoliosis. And I'm like, crap. All right, now what do I do? So like I put it back in the day where I was like, this is plan D.
Right.
Okay. Plan A, B, and C didn't work. I was like, I'm on plan D right now. I should probably think about E and F. Like that was like literally what I was saying back then. And I figured out a way. I just went on and took out a loan. It was just something I didn't want to do. But I also joined USA Weightlifting that same year. And through all those trials and tribulations, God had to come save me, so I'm, now I'm feeling saved and blessed. I'm feeling joy, like for literally the first time. And it was an amazing feeling. I was like, if you guys have never felt joy before, that is something that you should pursue. Because I had no care in the world, but I felt like I didn't need to have any care in the world about anything that might go wrong. So with that being said, I made my first international team my first year. And I also went to Israel, my first time ever leaving the country. I didn't even know I made the team until my coach said it randomly. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know. I was like, where are we going? And he's like, we're going to Israel, Israel. I'm like, and I look it up on the map and I'm like, wow, it's right next to Jordan. And I was just like, wow, it's right next to Jerusalem. Like, and now I'm just like, this is God sent. I was just like, this is the path.
I also read where you wanted to represent your country. So as a Black woman, as a woman of faith, why was that important to you to show up in that way?
I've always felt that way. I respect the military and I respect, like everything that's involved with it. Like you go and you try to create opportunities, not just for your country, but for other people. So it's admirable in that way. And I'm like, I want to do that. Like, I want to represent my country, because I'm proud of like where I live. And like now that I'm literally traveled around the world, I'm like, I am really proud of where I live in the world, because, we have a lot of opportunities a lot of people don't. And especially as a Black woman living on this planet. So with that being said, as an athlete, I was like, well, I want to do it either as an athlete or in the military. And it hadn't happened in the military yet, but then it ended up happening as an athlete. I'm like, sweet, I'm still able to represent my country. And sometimes when I describe being at the Olympic Games, I'm like, I was at war. Like this was war. Like it was more than just competing against, the same people we have been competing against the last 4 years in the quad is 4, makes up every Olympic cycle. And it was more than that to me. I was just like, I'm here to represent Stars and Stripes. I'm wearing all of our gear. People sent us off. They're just like, they're wanting us to come back and successful. And, as an athlete, as an American athlete, we have this, I want to say it's almost like an arrogance type of thing. And I try not to use that word to describe myself, because I don't see myself as arrogant. I see myself as confident, because I prepare myself to be in those situations of those great moments of me doing the best that I can. So, we're there in Beijing, all this stuff is going on. Like there's a war going on with Russia and Ukraine, United States, we're here trying to do our best. And I felt like, I was like, wow, I'm really doing it. And I had 2 opportunities to medal with 2 different pilots. So I'm like, regardless of who I race with, I'm going to absolutely make sure that I will be pushing us to greatness, because this is exactly what I want to do. And I want my pilots to know, like, I am here for us. Like, I'm here to help us win a medal, because this is what we're capable of doing. And both of those pilots were very capable. So when I was paired with Alana, I was like, she's an extraordinary woman. She's now she's a 5-time Olympic medalist, most decorated Black female athlete in winter sport. I was like, okay, this is our situation. She was in quarantine and all this other stuff. And I'm like, well, do you have a window? She's like, yes. I was like, you clearly have Wi-Fi. She's like, yeah, I got Wi-Fi. I was like, and you're able to like at least see your son in some capacity. She's like, yeah. I'm like, well, you have everything you need. Set the start record in the first heat. And then we break our own start record in the 3rd heat. So now we're really in the mix. And that 3rd heat was fire. Like it put us, into that top 3 spot. Like literally going into the 4th heat, all we had to do was make it down the hill. It was like, don't mess this up,
I'm gonna go pins and needles.
Right. Like you could substitute those words in whatever way capacity, but the thing was, don't mess this up.
Right.
So we pushed, we had a good push. I got in, we both got in, we loaded good. It felt different. I'm like, oh, I think we hit more walls than the last time. I'm just like, I don't know. I'm like, I am a little tired. I was like, I don't know. I was like, just praying for my driver to like be able to just like get it done. And then like we crossed the finish line, because we're that 3rd sled, and then there was 2 sleds to follow us. So like when we crossed the finish line, I see a number 1 on, like the times. And I'm like, I knew what that meant. I was just like, because I had like been trying to focus. I'm like, all right. What number do you want? Okay, you want to see number 1. So like we came down in the number 1 spot with 2 sleds left. So we weren't going to do any worse than 3rd place. Nice. And I like immediately started standing up. And I'm like, oh crap, you still got a break. So I'm like trying to hold on to the brakes, and I'm like cheering, and she's cheering. And, we get down at the bottom, and then like our coaches and, our helpers are at the bottom. They're just like, great job. You guys came down to number 1, and everyone's cheering. Mind you, it's COVID games. So we have staff, volunteers, and maybe other athletes that are like actually our audience. And so everyone's cheering really loud. I can't get my helmet off. I'm just, there's all these things. And then like my driver comes up to me, and she like hugs me. She gives me this big hug. She's like, you're an Olympics medalist now. You're an Olympic medalist. Like, we did it. And I was like,
fantastic.
Yeah. And it was just the most amazing feeling. And like the weight that was lifted, it was like, you did that.
Yeah.
Like you went out, you changed sports, you changed jobs, you relocated a couple times, like you made this happen. And I was just like, wow. And it was like the first time I was able to have the American flag like draped over me. So I was like, complete representation of United States. I was like, we did this.
Oh my God. What
It was, yes, yes.
fantastic story. Wow. And so are you in training right now in the Olympic Village right now? Like, because you're preparing for the next Winter Olympics, right?
So right now I'm in Colorado Springs, Colorado. I'm at the Olympic Training Center. I've been a resident athlete for the last 5 years because of my performance and capabilities. So they're allowing me to basically live on complex. I get housing and I get, basically meals and a facility to train in. So I'm using this training facility to help not only save money because bobsled is a very expensive sport. I'm saving money by staying here, but then also I'm able to get the training and medical needs that I can get because they also have a sports medicine center and performance center. So I'm able to get certain treatments and stuff to keep me healthy. So my next time of trying to go to the games, I'm shooting for Milano Cortina in 2026 as a pilot. It's going to be very difficult, but I'm trying to put myself in the best situations possible to learn as much as I can as a pilot and then try for my athleticism to keep me going so I can physically be able to outperform, and then be able to let that technique of driving try to come through at those games. And then if I make Paris, which I have no idea if I am, but again, this is just me doing something cross training wise. And if I'm successful in going to any national event for track and field, then I could possibly make that next Olympic team. And that puts me in a category of now I'm a double Olympian. And then let's say if I'm able to do really well, at the games and actually be in medal contention, then let's say I do medal. And then I'm the second female in USA history to medal at both winter and summer games. Like I'm trying to make certain things happen, but like at the same time, like you have to put yourself in a position. You're either going to try and fail or you try and succeed or whatever. It's trial and error at the end of the day. And you're just going to get better at whatever it is you're trying to do. And like I was telling people, I've actually had my first failure in the first time in 5 years this summer. Like I didn't make USAs. I tried my hardest. I didn't have the particular skill set and coaching that I needed to do it in that very short period of time. But I'm like, I was able to experience a failing moment, which was like, should I even go to this track? Like, I was like, my technique is trash, like you look like trash on film, like these are certain things. And like, man, my name isn't on the list. Like, should I even go? Should I email the coach? All these mental things. Now I'm starting to remember, okay, that's what that feels like. Okay, well, I'd rather experience this in this sport than to try to carry that and be unprepared in my main sport. So now I'm just using like that side job. You have your main job, your main sources of income, and then you have the other sources. Like it's okay, like, to fail sometimes. Like it's part of the process, but it's how you fail. What did you learn out of that failure? And can you remove those doubts in the future? Like, can you use what you just learned to use for the future to do better? And that's what I try to do in everything. And that I feel is what kind of makes me a little bit more successful, especially as an athlete, because I'm like, okay, failed in basketball in some ways of not knowing, not researching the sport. Okay, weightlifting, didn't have the right type of coaching. That definitely made my progression suffer. Like then it was an uphill battle. I'm like, okay, you need better coaching. So like these are certain things like, okay, I didn't do this right. You can do to make it happen. And with that being said, this is Bronzy.
Yes, hold it up, hold it up, hold it up.
With that being said, this is Bronzy.
Hi, Bronzy.
Yeah, we met in Beijing. Go figure. Yeah. But I've named 2 objects in my life. This was the second object. The first object was my Jeep, and with my medal. And I'm like, this is kind of like, this is your result of what you put into what you were pursuing.
Yes.
You've represented your country. You've done the hard work, the legwork. Physically, you've been able to overcome a lot. I'm not going to say the impossible, but the very difficult things, as a human being. You've been able to pivot. You've been able to think outside the box. You've been able to like notice the red flags. You've been trusting yourself. You've reached out. Like you've done all these things, and this is what you're able to get out of it. So I'm like, sweet. This is like 50 shades of gold.
Absolutely.
And anything that comes after it, it's like it's going to be, I feel like it's going to be as meaningful because I did do some of the hardest parts to get my bronze. But now one of the even harder parts is what I've noticed, and this is why people take a year off after the games, is that you've exhausted yourself so much. So now you have to replenish in some way. And last year was hard. Last year was hard. I was like, man,
Deal with that. How do
man.
how do you rest? How do you deal with burnout? And how do you rest? And when do you know it's time to start again? Like all of this is, it's just all such success training, because I've learned more from failure than I have from success in many cases. I've been burned out in a career, and I've tried different things. I felt frustration when things weren't moving as quickly as I wanted them to do. To go. But then I also understand, like, the 10,000 hour rule, which is
Yeah.
not necessarily, sometimes it's more than that, but it is the process of getting better at something. And sometimes it takes longer, and sometimes you hit plateaus and you're like, is this it? Can I go any higher? And then you have to kind of just go back and kind of wax on, wax off again. And then you break through, and then you achieve something that you didn't achieve, and then you plateau again. I mean, it's deep how you are constantly trying to move beyond your own idea of success. Because it's, after a while, it stops being about other people or your competition, or it's not about that at all. It's like, sometimes it's just this thing inside of you, and it drives me nuts. And I know you have it in spades, but it's this thing that says, but we're not done yet.
Yeah, it's a hard thing because I'm also in a point where like I really do want family. And I'm like, well, you can't really do, like, you're gone so long in bobsled that it's actually putting a strain on the other parts. And so I'm trying to find these happy mediums. I'm traveling, I'm meeting people, back on a dating scene, all those things. Like, you have to actually like put yourself out there. But I'm gonna say, before bobsled happened, I was working so much and then I was like in an area where like my particular selection was not really that apparent. I'm just like, wow, I was like, really like you. Oh, snap, you're leaving in 2 weeks. Like, I live in a military and athletic community. So a lot of the people that I'm into, they're not really here that long, but there's been a lot of migration to Colorado. So I'm like, okay, there's some people now. So like, there's those things like, okay, it might be my time, and but trying to make time for different stuff, and even yourself, is important, and it's going to look different for everyone. For me, last year after the games, after just like drilling it in for like 3.5, 4 years, like really trying to make it work, and I had to tell myself over and over, it's okay. Like, I literally had to tell myself, it's okay to go out. It's okay to not train today. It's okay to have that drink. Like, I had to tell myself over and over. And I'm someone that compartmentalizes pretty well. But with that being said, you still have to revisit. You can't just put it in a box and like leave it somewhere. Like I said, I can do this. I can do all those things, but you still have to revisit those things that could potentially hurt you later. So I've been having to kind of like unwind those things over the last year. And, and slowly I've been able to do all the things that I need to do, which is good for the long run, because you can't continue in some capacities without releasing energy. Like, you have to release it back. You can't just consume. You have to be able to give it back. And if you can't give it back, then you're not able to focus right. Now you're everywhere, and now you can't really think straight. And now certain stuff is suffering, and you're just like, man, I really need some rest. Man, I really need to go to sleep. Overworking yourself. You're filling your cup with work and knowing how to do it right, and this and that. But now you're lacking in sleep and energy and all the other things you need to actually keep that workflow flowing properly. So it's like, you have to be able to take a step back. You have to be able to realize what you really need, and then allow yourself to feel those things and to just be normal for a bit. Like, I call, like, me, like, not, if I'm an athlete, I'm like, well, normal people, which I'm like, they're not people that like compete on a regular basis. I'm like, well, normal people, they could do all this stuff. And I'm like, well, sometimes you have to actually let yourself be normal. Like people in the business world, man, like those people that do this, and this, they go to the office all the time. Let's just say they're non-normal people, and the people that work from home are normal. Like whatever your description of normal is for you, like sometimes you have to be that normal person and then live a little bit, something different, do something different for a bit, be a little bit normal, and then come back to your thing, be like, okay, now I'm rebuilt.
You're so amazing and so insightful about not just your journey, but how you progress, the way in which you have, and the obstacles that you've overcome, like so inspiring. And I'm just putting it out into the universe that you're going to be working with amazing brands, that you're going to win a gold medal, that you're going to do everything that you've ever dreamed of in the sport. And we're all going to be there waving that flag for you at the next Olympics, because you're a star. And I'm so grateful to have been able to chat with you today. And the last question I always ask, this podcast is called Built by a Boss. Mm-hmm. What is your definition of a boss?
Definition of a boss is pursuing everything to your best ability, 100% and more. Because when you give your all for something, then you're really going to know if you're really good at it or not. Because if you go half-ass, if you go 50% on it, then there's that what if. And then you carry that what if until everything else you do. And then like, you're just like, well, I want to go backwards. And now it's 10 years and then you're trying to go back. But the thing is, you want to progress to the point where I've given my all, I know what I need. And then you're able to put that to the next thing and then the next thing. And then now you're not going backwards. You're just building on your own foundation of success. And then that success just builds, and it fills you with that thing of like, I can do anything. And when you have that feeling of you can do anything, you're just going to be able to pursue literally everything. You're not going to have a care in the world of like, okay, it's difficult, but it's not impossible. And like, now you're going to know how to fulfill all those little things, and then also be able to give back at the same time, because now you're successful. People know you're successful. You're the person to go to, and, you're able to say, well, hey, if I can do it, you can do it. And then now you're able to set not just a trend, but also like just a pathway, of someone that is unknowing of how they should do something. And now you're that model, that future model of like, wow, this person came from this, but they were able to find this and this and this and this and this. And they're like, well, how did this person do it? And then you realize they went through all these trials and tribulations, and now they're able to say, well, hey, this is the blueprint of how you can be successful. So that's my definition of a boss.
Yes, I love it. Oh my God. So inspiring.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I had such a wonderful time speaking with you, just hearing your point of view on life. Such a pleasure. And I just
same.
So much out of our chat today. And good luck to you.
I'm Evelyn Brooks, and you've been listening to Built by a Boss. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Sylvia Hoffman. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share it with someone you know who might like it too. Consider giving us a 5-star review and a comment. You can also visit our website and follow us on Instagram at Built by a Boss. Until next time, be kind, be brave, be better, be a boss.